Hello and welcome, Candice Oneida here. Welcome to Feminine Success Secrets. Today what I want to talk to you about is intuition, and I'm going to give you three methods, three how-tos as to how to get more deeply into relationship with your intuition. The thing is that we need to make a lot of clarity and definition between thinking or thinking harder and intuition and intuitive power, and where that comes from and how it differs from thinking. So the thing that I want to define here, I have a 20-year background in a very esoteric style of meditation and spiritual practice. And we use this concept called the ordinary mind or the ordinary mental consciousness. So the ordinary mind is experienced when you find yourself thinking in your head, right? So you're thinking in your head. So a problem comes or a situation happens and your mind goes into a thinking orientation and potentially a sort of rationalization or deduction about what's going on, okay? And hence there becomes situation, thinking about it, conclusion, decisions made from the ordinary mind, the ordinary mental consciousness. Now, there are plenty of very brilliant people with brilliant ordinary mental consciousnesses. So I'm not here to say the mind is this mind is not the direction for everything. Mind, rational thought, deduction, being well educated, all those kind of things are something I definitely encourage and applaud here. However, intuition is a different thing. It comes from a different space. It comes from a different part of you. And in order to get into intuitive power and the intuitive parts of ourselves, we need to go into different faculties of consciousness, right? There are different entry points for that. And I'm going to talk to you about a few of those entry points, if you like, today, in order to get more into your intuition. So I'm going to give you some examples. So what I find is if I'm thinking in my mind, it tends to be quite slow. Now, people who know me well would laugh because I'm actually extremely fast-paced, even when I'm thinking, right? Now, the thing is, intuition is of a different order of magnitude, right? I really want to pass that because those that end up in an intuitive relationship to a situation, to life, tend to be much bigger people, right? So what I'm trying to pass here is often from the ordinary mental consciousness, the ordinary mind, we are in a much smaller version of ourselves. It is through the intuitive self, the intuitive part of yourself, that you are starting to be able to tap into things of a greater order of magnitude in terms of power inside of you, right? And so I'm going to give you an example of something that I'm sure you can relate to. So remember, I was always I've been a big traveler all of my life. So from sort of 19, where I left to go and travel in India with some girlfriends for 3 months, through to, now I've been a world traveler. I'm Australian, I live in the United States. I consider myself very international, and I definitely reach people very internationally. I love people of all cultures. I love experiencing different cultures and different people. So I was traveling. I was a very well traveled person, and at the time I would have been 26. I had been traveling throughout Argentina and Chile, and I'd actually been skiing up and down the Andes. And I had found myself, I had had a little affair. This is a little aside. I had a little affair with a Brazilian boy at the time, in a place called Las Leñas in Argentina. And I was on the edge in the northern part of Argentina, and I kind of wanted to go and visit him in Sao Paulo in Brazil. And I was literally on the border and sort of starting to plan how to get there to meet him. And I was moving sort of forward into that, and I got this loud inner no. And it was the loudest inner voice I had heard outside of my own sort of ordinary mind, the blah blah mind that talks to you all the time, right? It was a loud voice, but it came with this absolute no, do not enter Brazil. Now, again, I'm not a scaredy cat when I travel. I traveled on my own for a long time by then already. This was a certitude that came from inside. And if I unpack what came with that no, is something very bad will happen to you if you go into Brazil and try to go on this trip. I'm not saying Brazil's a bad place. It's not about that. It was just for me in that instant instance, if I had followed through on that, something very, very bad was going to happen to me. Fortunately, I listened to the voice, and as I often say, I didn't need to have that life experience. I didn't need to have to go in there and see what that was, because it was going to be bad. I'm sure you've had instances like that where you've had this strong something inside you just goes, this does not feel right. This thing doesn't feel right. That is your intuition breaking through your normal mechanisms of thought and belief and conditioning. Now, thought, belief, and conditioning, this is kind of an important piece here, right? Because the thing about the ordinary mind, what I call the blah, 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 blah mind, and I think you get what I mean there, because it's constantly rah, 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 rah. It's the thing that's going on in the background all the time. It's why, I do spiritual work. I'm a meditator because I seek to get into something that is beyond that is deeper than that is bigger than that is merged with my divine nature, right? And so how did that ordinary mind, how did the blah, blah mind come into place? How did that mind that says you're good or you're bad or you can do this or you can't do this, how did that happen? It happens through a lot of things. It happens through conditioning. And by conditioning, I mean your education, your socioeconomic background, your friends, your education, those kinds of things, right? These things build the way we think. The landscape of our ordinary mental consciousness is built on those kinds of things. It's also built on the traumas that happen to us, whether it's this life or a past life. So there's things that happen in the human consciousness that are seeded when there's a traumatic event, and they stay over time, right? Not here to talk about that in great depth today, but I'm talking about conditioning here. What conditions your state of mind, your ordinary mental consciousness most of the time? So in order to get into a part of ourselves that is deeper, wiser, and broader in the way that it sees things, the way it navigates life, we have to really go and have a look at that conditioning first. So this is why I'm not here today going to talk to you about, this is exactly how you're going to get into your intuition right now. Because at first, if I'm just being really honest with you, the thing is at first, you've got to put a lot of thoughts that come into your mind to question. Because the truth is, just because you have a thought that feels like it's an inspired thought, it may not be. Sorry. I'm here to tell the truth, not to delude you further. We delude ourselves, right? The thing is, we are the ones that delude ourselves more than anybody else, which is why we require friends and mentors to keep reflecting us back to ourselves, right? And I'm talking about, the kind of friends I have, the kind of friends that reflect my beauty and my greatness and my bigness and my spiritual expansion, as well as the things that are not me, that are in the way, that are conditioning, that are blocks to my biggest and broadest and most spiritual self. So putting that on the table. So let's say we have all this conditioning that conditions the blah, 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 blah mind. Then how on earth do we have any space to feel or to listen to this intuitive self? Now, that experience I told you about in Brazil was a loud, loud no. It was loud inside me. It almost rattled my consciousness, right? I think it kind of had to, because it's where I was at in my life. It had to rattle me. Most of the time, our intuitive nature is a much quieter voice. It's a quiet voice inside us that is not necessarily a voice that tells you a story in a line like that. Why I say that is often an intuitive ping or an intuitive thing comes very packed up. It's just a knowing. I know this is the right thing. I know this does not feel right. I can't explain why from my mind, right? I can't explain why. Now, how do we tap into this? How do you get into your intuition then? Well, I have to put on the table that you have to do some sort of work that addresses the conditioning, that addresses the who you think you are, what you think you want sometimes. And this is what I do in my work with women in the Powerfully Feminine Intensive. It's the part on desire. To work out what you really want and who you really are, we often have to have a look at the levels that have been conditioned on those things, right? So find someone to help you are what I would call deconditioning. Not reconditioning, not positive affirmations and all that, but deconditioning, clearing the slate. What's called tabula rasa, clear the slate, right? In order that you are actually in a position to receive and be in a place where you can actually receive intuitive knowledge. Now, intuitive knowledge that I'm talking about is coming from a higher place, a higher part of yourself, higher nature, right? Or we could also say more inner, okay? This is a key part to feminine power. So higher in this situation means more inner, things and signals that come from inside you. So we're going to talk about the first way. It's about going inside, seeking inside first. Okay, this is the first way. Now there's two ways I want to teach you this. It's about going into the heart. So we can have a situation or a conundrum in your life that comes up, and then, all the conditioning gets triggered, and I should want this, or I should go there, or I should whatever. I want you to go to your heart, and I want you to feel inwards. I'm pointing to the heart center in the middle of the chest, not the physical heart here, right? So go into your heart and tune inwards, right? So feel into your heart and feel what that says about the situation. Does it sit well with your heart? Does it feel right inside you? Okay. The second method I want to teach you is about feeling downwards. Now you can't see this in this shot here, but feeling down, sinking down into the belly and into your pussy. A sinking downwards, not thinking downwards, by the way. When I'm talking about sinking down, I'm talking about feeling your belly. Now I'm putting my hands facing inwards on the belly. Like if you can't do it without having your hands there, then put your hands on the belly. Feel downwards. Then ask your belly or ask your pussy if this thing feels good or right. Does it sit well in your system, right? Does it feel good in your body? Now, in your body, you're going to feel the most when you're down in the belly, in your pussy, okay? You are feeling this know-how in the body that is so, so big inside of us as people. I'm saying people because this is equally for men as for women. Obviously not the pussy piece, right? There's a different way, right? So feeling downwards, and then feel how that thing or that response or that decision you have to make feels in your belly, feels from your pussy. And the third way I want to talk to you about today is about this concept of where inspiration comes from above. So we've got the ordinary mental consciousness that is often felt here. In Sanskrit, it's called the chitta. The chitta is the noise of the mind, the monkey mind, often spoken about in meditation practice. It's noisy in there. So in order to create a more quietude, I'm going to encourage you to find some sort of meditation practice that is not about relaxation, but has a structured component that actually helps you to be able to quieten the mind through engaging different faculties of consciousness. For example, when I moved to America, I started a meditation school here, and the first thing we teach is a meditation on the third eye. Okay? The reason for that is we use this organ or this structure of consciousness as a way to internalize. Again, we're going inner, right? We go inside, and through that structured meditation, you can actually feel something different. You can relate to yourself in this more broad context, and the mind starts to quieten down. So when I was talking about above, what often happens then is this intuition, you get this sense of something descends or an idea comes from something beyond the cage here. Now when I got that no, before going to Brazil, it descended from above. Something went no. And I caught it. It literally just it's like carved away my mind and just said, you have to listen to this. It's not always like that. Often, as I was saying, it's this quiet voice. So in order to hear the quiet voice, we have to quieten things down. I talk about the ordinary mental consciousness as the Las Vegas mind, right? So if you've ever gone to Las Vegas, you go into Las Vegas and it's very, very, very loud, okay? So we need to get to somewhere else. Leave Las Vegas and go to the desert, The desert is such a wonderful, wonderful place for quietude. So what I'm talking about here is find some sort of meditation practice or teacher or teaching that can actually teach you how to create some quietude inside. A return inside so that you can actually feel into and be in a position or an orientation to receive, and remember receive is such a feminine concept, to receive intuitive pings. So what we covered off here today was discussion about intuition and how before we can really go into our intuitive nature, we have to go inside. Right? There's a need to go inside. We spoke about going inside and checking in with the heart center, as a way to feel inwards when you need to make a decision or there's a conundrum or a situation in your life. Or we can feel downwards, sink downwards into the belly and the pussy as a way to get more in touch with your intuitive know-how. And the third way I spoke about was through meditation and internalization. We can start to receive inspired thought, intuition, and that it often comes a lot more packed up, not so blah, 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 just knowing about something that comes from above by virtue of releasing conditioning and being able to go into quietness inside. If you liked the video today, I'd love a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe over here. And remember, when you have the courage to go out there and shine, you give others permission to do the same. So let's go out there and shine this week. Bye-bye for now.